Welcome to the Minimalist CEO podcast with Nate Lindquist. Nate created the Minimalist CEO method to help business owners redefine and grow their businesses by finding new demand in places they never thought to look, where there's no competition. By following his opposite thinking strategy, Nate's coaching clients have grown their business up to 40% in just 2 months and created tens of millions of dollars in revenue. Nate himself has launched more than 140 businesses. On the show, Nate interviews successful business owners and experts who share the secrets you can use to have a better business and a better life.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Nate Lindquist here with the Minimalist CEO podcast. I'm here with a special guest. We have amazing guests here. We continue to dig in, go deeper and deeper into what makes businesses more successful. Today, we're finding really, when we talk about stripping things away, getting to what really matters, we got a guy who really has figured that out. I'm introducing you to Brendon, Faust, the co-owner and CEO of Mold Zero. And, this guy, Brendon, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. And the story, reading your story, understanding what your son went through, what you've been through, this idea of air quality, you've got this background in making a difference for other people and in nonprofit. And then it turns into this massive drive to help people because of what you went through. And I think it's such a core, it's obviously what you've done with Mold Zero. You've grown the company to be, right up into the way into the seven figures. You're continuing to grow. What's the driving force behind building your business as effectively as you have?
I think more than anything, it's making a difference in people's lives. And when you understand that, and you actually duplicate your role and how you can serve other people, it communicates. So, I don't particularly like to call myself a salesman, but I've been told that I'm good at sales. But more than anything, it actually comes down to educating the person and having their best interests at heart and making sure that if you can't help them, then don't try to sell them something that they don't need. But if you really understand the problems that they're running into, and you see the impact that it could be having on their lives or somebody's lives that they care about, then of course you're going to be able to communicate with sincerity and it's going to resonate with them. So that's, the thing that really drives me is making a difference. I had my own issues. My son had his issues with mold toxicity. And when the lights go off on that and you realize that it's actually a real deal, it's not a scam, it's not just some way to make a lot of money, but it really is a invisible enemy that can debilitate people in a way that most people don't even think is possible. When you really understand that, it never gets old. You wake up with a mission and a purpose, and you want to change people's lives. And I think that's what's really led to the success for Mold Zero and, me helping to expand the company.
You've hit on a topic is very real for me. When I turned 20, I was done my sophomore year of college. I came back and all of a sudden I had a doctor's appointment, an inhaler. I couldn't breathe. And what I found out is that not only was there mold in the air in my dorm, but there was also mold under the carpet where I grew up because I had a bedroom in the basement. It was really nicely set up, but there've been years of mold and they peel back the carpet and there's all this mold and I was getting sick and it scared the hell out of me. They're giving me these inhalers, arobidflunicillide and prednisone and, boom, I'm in the hospital. I'm having anxiety attacks. It's like scaring the hell out of me. And, I looked at that. I'm like, I've got to get through this. And I realized I moved and I started getting healthy.
Yeah.
And then I moved again and I started getting sick again. And I found out I had this massive sensitivity that went on for a number of years. But you've hit on something that's core. And I think for our listeners, it's certainly been a theme, and the idea of you got to be on your quest. So you have, a very big, serious moment of frustration and fear and someone you love and care about, something that's bigger than you, not just about the business, but about helping other people, helping your son, getting yourself healthy, seeing I've got to figure this damn thing out. And then it's a driving force. It's in this case, it's very similar to the story I say all over, over and over again is how did that 90-pound woman lift the car of her son? How did the 18-year-old girl lift the car when the jack broke off her uncle? And you Google this stuff and you figure it out. It's there was a need, a deeper, urgent need that was bigger than me, that was based on caring and helping, it was love-based. And it's I get up in the morning because I know I've seen other businesses who suffer. And I know, look at all the junk food, look at all the waste, look at all the BS and nonsense, BS being big story. I like to keep it clean here. And I know it's got to stop. I want people to cut away the overhead. So I'm looking at what you're doing, man. You obviously got it. I'm not giving you any space to talk here, but I think I'm praising you. What you're doing with the company is inspiring. I'm glad you're on the podcast. And if you could, you've grown this company. I would love, could you just share the biggest challenges that you had to overcome and what you did to improve your success in the business in the process?
I think that the biggest thing I had to overcome was trying to do it all myself. You know what I'm saying? There comes a point where you want to manage every aspect of your business and being able to put other people into place. And I think that if there's one of the gifts that I know I have is being able to find really good people and putting them together, right? And that was part of what I did in the nonprofit, was really finding incredible talent. And, it's the sort of law of attraction in terms of you're going to find people similar to you and they're going to want to migrate and be around you. So that's really a crucial element to, as far as not just being the only one, but actually putting a team in place that can help you on that mission and inspiring them to help you on that mission, So
was your vision really important here, Brendon? I mean, 100%. Being able to share the vision with your team members. Did you create people who believed in what you're doing before they look for a job?
Absolutely, because you're talking about actually being able to change somebody's life, and like what you ran into, right? So you were dealing with symptoms in terms of this was happening, and you're taking various medications and potentially, different inhalers and whatnot. But ultimately, there was a core problem that you were running into. And truthfully, you were treating the symptoms in that scenario rather than actually finding what was at the root cause of the situation. When you moved out of your dorm, the problem was no longer a problem. So the actual problem was toxicity in your environment. So I think that if you apply that approach to every aspect of your life, which is finding root cause or what's the actual problem that's causing these symptoms, then all of a sudden it opens up real solutions that are lasting. That's why, for Mold Zero, our philosophy and what I've gone through aligns very much with, the doctors that are trying to find root cause. And that leads right into environmental toxicity. Mold toxicity triggers in the environment, things that you might be eating that are triggering situations physically, mentally, and ultimately spiritually. So if you are in a toxic home, the number of labels that can come from being in a toxic home, depression, anxiety, even schizophrenia. I've talked to various psychiatrists that talk about mold toxicity leading to some of these labels that you never would think are actually related to environmental toxins.
It's funny that you say that. I don't want to say funny, but it's relevant that I've heard, not only have I over the years, I mean, I'm 46 now and I'm giving that away, but I have to say that because when I shaved my beard off, I look 12. But I've talked to people who've been through this and have had an illness at home. And what generally happens is there's a whole breed of advisors around you, the parents, family members. And, here's what I generally hear. Stop being a baby. You just got to calm down. You're anxious. Or, really forcing people into their shell of what's wrong with me. Yeah, I guess it's not environment. It's you. The problem's with you. And, I got some of that. And I don't think it was super fair or nice. And there was some love there and there's some caringness, but a lot of it was not looking to the root cause of you're a pretty healthy kid. There's probably more going on here. And it's sort of the blame game too. I think a lot of people will blame. They'll say, well, it's because you drink too much. It's because you eat too much. It's because you're overweight. And it's always this, I'm not surprised that you're not feeling well. You're always being negative.
You have no idea how many times I run into that with specific families where there's one person in the family that has mold sensitivities, because it's about 25% of the population that actually has a gene that prevents them from detoxing from mold the same way everybody else does. So they look like the crazy ones in the family, or they think that they're hypochondriac, or that there's something that they're just imagining it. No, you're actually dealing with a gas is getting into the body. The gas is fatty in substance, so it has a natural affinity to the most natural part of the body, which is the brain, and that impacts the nervous system. So you have mold toxicity that could actually lead to things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, even cancer of the liver, things like these that most people they don't believe that there's a connection. But when you actually start doing the research, there absolutely is a connection.
We're going to get this in front of more people, man. I'm so glad that you're here. I know there's going to be thousands of people who hear this. So the work that you're doing is bigger than the remediation and the services that you have in the business. And that's obviously why, we want to have you sharing in this podcast, Brendon. I think the work you're doing is exemplary. It's not just about, look at me, look how smart I am. I can feel the heart and the soul of what you're doing. And, I think that from a standpoint of being a business owner, I think you're hitting on something that we don't get to as much as I'd love to, which is like anyone listening this far into this and hearing what you're sharing has got to be inspired already.
Yeah, I hope so.
We're talking about root cause. We're talking about, creating that turning point. We're talking about what really matters here. You could have gone out and been the guy who encases mold and the problem goes on. You could have been the guy who paints crap into a corner. You could have been the guy who, listen, it's stack them deep, sell them cheap, make the sale. But the idea is you're the guy, someone could actually scream and demand that you write the book, that you tell the story, that you show others how to do it, because you're coming bottom up from there's a meaning here for you. You were able to go through this process and save your son's life, save your own life. Now you're helping others. So I want to go deeper into that. And I have a sense that we're going to have a chance to do that. I think kind of bringing it back, knowing that that's there, hoping everyone I'm saying get your pen and paper out. I got mine out. I want people I'm always writing stuff down. So I want people to gaff that on a pen, bring it into the boat, take that on board. As I shift gears right now, Brendon, what I'd love to know is if you had an old way of thinking, and we all have to come on the journey. I'm going to make you share it too. How old are you?
I'm 45.
You're 45. So we're similar in age.
Yeah.
And you have the old way of thinking, sort of the before things started to click. I'll have a business. Oh, I'll go into nonprofit. Oh, I'll make a difference for other people. Oh, I want to be a self-provider. So you have sort of this old way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Then something happens when you realize, I've been limited all this time and I'm no longer limited. Some call it an epiphany. Some call it a turning point. Some call it an aha moment. What was it for you?
So the first aha moment was with my son, right? And that was when we saw what was causing his issues and were able to handle it right away. That was the first one. The second one was when I had issues physically myself. I had a pain in my chest that wouldn't go away. I went to a number of different doctors. One guy was like, you need an EKG. Another doctor was like, you have Lyme's disease. Another doctor said you have an autoimmune disease. And I was getting a fever every month. It wouldn't go away. I did air samples in my home. I had applied the approach that I initially had kind of signed on for, which was basically using a dry fog to handle my home. And it looked good. The air samples came back. It was clean, no problem. So I thought it was from going into other people's homes. But then 6 months later, my AC overflows. And of course, it's upsetting when it happens, right? It's like, oh God, I'm going through this. Turns out it was a blessing because I was removing the continuous flooring in my own home. I popped the baseboards, and sure enough, there was a toxic mold behind the baseboards, and 1.5 feet up, there was Aspergillus penicillium. So these two molds, right, Chaetomium and the Aspergillus, are fighting it out in my bedroom. It's literally a biological warfare zone in my bedroom, and I'm sleeping in it. And when I see that, as soon as I pop the baseboards, I know what I'm looking at, right? So obviously, I had then at that point in time applied the full restoration technique, traditional restoration in terms of containment, cutting it out, cleaning it up, HEPA-vac, wipe down, air scrubbing, and then I fogged my whole home. And then 2 weeks later, all the symptoms went away. I was taking supplement after supplement to try to solve it. And it would get better, but it was only treating the symptoms rather than actually getting to the cause. Once I found the cause, which was water intrusion coming into the cinder blocks and it not being properly waterproofed and having drywall in that master bedroom, and of course, mold loves drywall, I was able to get better. So that was a point where I put my foot down with my partners and I said, that's it. We're not doing just the fogging anymore. We are going full-blown hybrid because we need to do this the right way. And I'm not going to tell somebody that we're doing it the right way if we're not. So I don't care if it costs us more money. We're going to take care of mold and mold toxicity, and that requires a full handling, not just a partial handling.
Well, as you share this, I think about, now, so you have partners in your business?
I have one partner and then I had another partner, and we weren't particularly philosophy-wise on the same page. So sometimes it's better to move. But
you're in charge of where things are headed, your role as CEO?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So you're in a position where you can make a difference for a lot of people. And as the company continues to grow, I think, I look at it, as an example, if you were to come into my house, I'm in, my wife and I are like, found the house we wanted, exactly what we wanted. And we bought it. It's from 1998. We moved into it. And I said, I want to make sure that this house is healthy. How quickly could you find that out?
I mean, truthfully, we do a free environmental consultation, that takes about an hour, right? And I have a pretty good idea when I do that. If I don't find something that's screaming out at me at that point in time, then I will call in the inspectors that I know and trust that are going to go deeper than just air samples. They're going to do mycotoxin testing. They're going to do direct samples. They're going to do air samples. They're going to look in places. Well, I usually look in places that nobody else would look, because you have to have that care factor, going up in attics, going into crawl spaces, going into doors. And I'll still do that as a CEO just to stay fresh, to kind of make sure that I stay connected and to what's going on, and making sure that I have that personal connection with people. Because otherwise, I feel like, what am I doing? We're here to help people, and we're here to serve, and to command is to serve. And you're really only as valuable as you can serve others. I'm in the service industry. So that's what I'm here to do. So to answer your question, I could give you a pretty good idea in an hour. If I don't find something at that point in time, then I'm calling in some of the better inspectors in the US to use the more detailed testing. And honestly, I would do that either way. If you really want to know how your air quality is, you want to do the more sensitive testing. It does cost more money, but at the same time, it could save you a lot more money in the long run. If you have chronic issues that are actually related to mold toxicity, to mycotoxin exposure, and to these types of things that cause a lot of problems for people.
So can you find experts? You could vet and find experts any place in the country and be like, absolutely, this is what we need to test. And over the period of a week, you could map out like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what needs to happen.
Absolutely. Yes.
And what would be an investment for someone? Say you don't find it right away. You got to do the air quality test. You got to get into the attic. You got to have a few more hours on site. You got to have the specialist come in. I mean, what's someone investing to say, hey, listen, I just want to make sure there's nothing wrong?
I have one inspector here in Tampa that is really good, that he'll charge like $850. I have another one that will spend, 8 hours in your home with another guy, and they're charging like $2,500. So in Florida, it's this sort of a separation of church and state, if you will. The inspectors wear one hat, the remediators wear another.
So these are affiliates of yours. They're not actually your company, but when it's time.
Of course. Yeah. There's guys that I know that do a good job. And that's really all that I'm looking for, is a guy that is going to really do a thorough job to make sure that every stone is overturned, and they're looking, right? And that they know for certain what's going on. So, there's no business relation in terms of financial connection whatsoever, but it's guys that I know do a good job and really care about the clients. And then they write out a report and a protocol, and then I'll make sure that report and protocol gets executed. But truly, there's not enough restoration companies that understand this aspect of the business. It's something that really needs to change in the overall industry. They're chasing the insurance money, but it makes them beholden to insurance and what insurance will pay for. And similar to the medical industry, as soon as you become reliant on what insurance is going to cover, now you have lost track of what you're actually there to do, which is make people better.
So, I think we've had I haven't even gone into all my questions, but it's funny because my questions are about stripping away junk food and waste, getting past symptom management and dealing with root cause. So it's like, who's this Brendon guy? And I knew I got a vibe right away that we're tuned in, we're on the same page. And, even when you said, I like to go in and climb into the attics, I work with clients one-to-one. I work with exactly two because I want to stay sharp, but I really don't, I know I can help sort of people in a group environment better. Yeah. But I go in and we sharpen the saw, and I have a handful of clients that I work with. I might talk to them 4 times a year, sort of as a board, kind of an advisor kind of a thing. Yeah. But I dig that because it sharpens the tools. So what I'd like to do with everything you shared, and I know you were kind of finishing a thought there, but I think the point that you made is really clear, that we're going to go out and help people. We want to get people healthy. We're going to notice the problems. The people who are having the problems are calling. We're going to help more people understand to notice that there is a problem. It's not always sick. It could just be, let's prevent and let's know ahead of time.
There are things you can do to absolutely prevent as well. No question.
Yeah. So I think, even tooling up, making that stronger, preventing even better. We've helped companies build systems where it's like, listen, monitor, manage, connect with bigger groups, property managers, homeowners associations, people who see a problem. Here's how you can see, if you see it, say something. It's just like in the airport, you see a bag, see something, say something. So I think what I'd love to do is just kind of sum this up with, if listeners get nothing else from this interview, What's a primary takeaway that you want them to remember and take action on? Because remember, they could be in any business, but I want them to take action because they listen to this podcast. So if they do nothing else and you've done some difference making, and remember, there's people who have marketing firms, there's companies listening who are just starting out. There's companies who have earned their stripes and are like, listen, I need a different way. I need an exit strategy. I'm in the trenches too much. We've got plumbers, electricians. We've got people in the restoration space. We've got lawyers. We've got attorneys here. We've got, people who are in sometimes anyone in a home service space or in a service industry is jumping on. So what would you leave them with that, if they go and implement, sort of like close the idea between, wow, that was a great, my worst fear here is people love my podcast and keep downloading it like they are, and they don't do anything. They don't implement anything. So what would you leave them with?
I think that the one thing that's been true for me is that helping people never gets old.
Yeah.
Okay. There are all kinds of things that you can kind of burn out on, repetition, going through the same thing over and over again. It gets old. But if you are actually making a difference in somebody's life, right, that's not going to get old. So, and it. And some industries it sort of lends itself to helping people more than others. But ultimately, if you come from that direction, people are going to pick it up. They're going to know that you're there to actually help them. And if you have that sincerity, you talk to them from, you really put yourself in their shoes. You look at it like, how would I want somebody to deal with me? You almost put yourself in their space and you look at it from that angle. That's going to make a huge difference because you're going to treat that person in a different way than just, I need to get the business. I need to close a deal. And if you can, and they'll feel it, and people pay when you're actually really helping them and you're solving a problem for them rather than just looking for the dollar. Don't get me wrong. You got to make money in today's world. There's zero question about it, but you can make that money helping people and changing people's lives, making a difference in people's lives.
I think this is great. I'm taking notes here. I'm like, this is, Brendon, I think you're not faking it. I love the real thing, proof of product. You're the real deal. I hope that all our listeners are listening. Brendon, thanks very, very much for taking the time to be on this podcast. I think you found an avenue where there's going to be thousands, I would argue hundreds of thousands of people. And I would say within the next, 3 to 6 months, there'll be millions of people who are going to hear this who need to hear it. And I'm really glad that we happened to connect. You got invited to the podcast and that we've had the chance to do this today.
I like what you're doing. I appreciate it, man. I do.
Awesome. Well, again, to everyone, this is Brendon Faust. He's brilliant in dealing with mold issues, helping people stay healthy, and if we were to just whittle it down to the stuff that's most important, I think you got a guy here who has the company Mold Zero. He's not talking all about himself. There's an important message is get to the root cause, stop the waste, stop the pitching, stop getting sucked in. If someone says they're going to help you and your home be healthy, there's got to be a way to verify and validate that it's not just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. And so hopefully this gives you pause. We'll put some information to get in touch with Brendon in the show notes. And I know that after this conversation already, Brendon, we're going to be talking some more because I love the idea of making sure more people hear what you're doing. I think, I've seen the horror videos. More people in the mold remediation space aren't just locking in to make things pretty, locking in future or current problems forever by sealing things up and making them look pretty. I think more people need to know how to scale. Obviously, you found a way to do it. Let's get you further faster, man.
I like it. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Great interview. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the Minimalist CEO podcast. Again, I'm Nate Lindquist. Every now and then we end up with a gem and we have a great conversation. We invite someone who we know is going to be a great match. Brendon showed us today that, in fact, he is. I hope you take the time to implement what you've learned. Ask us questions. You can email help@theminimalistceo.com, subject line help, or you can do subject line podcast. We're a helping system. We help other businesses strip away the waste and focus on helping other people. And also we help them, learn how to turn competitors into clients and get out of that competition traffic jam by really validating the problems they solve. It's like what, most businesses are running around and saying, what major are you in? What's your major? It's like, this isn't college. This isn't the industrial age. Get fascinated with solving problems. So download, subscribe to the podcast, share it with everyone else. Take the time to stay connected. Meet us on The Minimalist CEO on Facebook. Find us on Instagram, The Minimalist CEO Podcast. And yeah, we're going to be back next week. So keep it coming. We got some new content, some solo training, more stuff that we're going to be announcing every single week. So good stuff to come.